Chapter 31. We find some different dead guys. St Mark's Church looked different at night. It was on 10th Street near 2nd Avenue, across from a convenience store and an Urban Outfitters. But the church felt like it was in the middle of nowhere, an island of darkness behind its iron fence and wooded yard. We passed the bench where Annabeth and I had talked on Monday. At the time, it had seemed like a nice place to hang out. Now it seemed like a nice place to get mugged or swarmed by angry spirits. The gates were black, and like the Aie perfumery, decorated with Greek key designs. Warning, mythological mayhem inside. We slipped through and into the cemetery. More trees, grass, benches. I couldn't see any headstones, but Annabeth assured me the ancient graves were there under the brick pathways, gnarled tree roots and thick ivy. I believed her. The air felt 10 degrees cooler. Ground fog clung to my ankles. I hadn't been in a place this creepy since 15 minutes ago, when we left Hecate's. Hakuba and Nope sniffed around, pulling my arms in different directions. The area probably smelled like a high-end buffet to them. We had the place to ourselves. Out on the avenue, traffic flowed. Pedestrians went about their business. But the bustling mortal world seemed muted and far away, like we'd already crossed through a veil into the world of the dead. I didn't like that idea. "Pete," I called into the gloom. "Where you at?" Annabeth elbowed me. "Maybe let's not call him Pete until we get to know him. His crypt is over there." She led us to the side of the church, under a stained-glass window, at ground level. A dark stone marker was affixed to the wall. "In this vault lies Petrus Stuyvesant." There were more words after that, but I was too nervous to read them. Probably they were the fine print, warning that what would happen if Pete's spirit was disturbed. Results may vary. Do not let ghosts operate heavy machinery. Seek divine help if your dead lasts longer than 12 hours. Gale barked, leaping from Grover's shoulder to mine. "She says we'd better start," Grover translated. "The goo is only effective for a few hours at most." I wondered if the polecat could feel my shoulders shaking. "Okay, Annabeth, you good?" She hefted the unlit torches. It occurred to me that I should have brought a box of matches. "Ready," she said. "Just help me by concentrating on what we need." Right, I thought. I want the spirits to rebuild a haunted house. If this went well, we could start our own show on the Home DIY channel, Renovated to Death. Already, I wasn't doing well staying focused. I was about to suggest we take a minute, maybe practice some meditative breathing, but it was too late. Annabeth stretched out her arms and the torches blazed to life on their own. Blue and white flames cast a sickly glow across the old stone wall, glinting on the stained glass. The depictions of saints leapt and danced in a way that wasn't at all creepy. Concentrate, I told myself. I closed my eyes. That didn't help. My mind just raced with more wild ideas. I focused on the stone marker. I imagined Hecate's mansion being rebuilt, with pizza toppings. Stop it, brain. I hoped the rest of the gang was having better luck. The ground trembled. Annabeth almost lost her balance, but she regained her bearings quickly. Gale jumped off my shoulder and hid behind me. The polecat was no fool. If the ghosts turned angry, much better to let them devour the big juicy demigods. The fire warmed the air. Blue light danced across my arms, making me look like a corpse, and I really didn't need that analogy. Hakuba growled as the spectre appeared. It rose against the wall like a shadow, Annabeth's shadow. Then the dark silhouette deepened, peeling itself from the bricks and taking on a smoky form like a cloud of coal dust. I sensed its aggravation, confusion, anger. It was asking a question. Why? Next to me, Nope let loose a torrent of pee. Not going to lie, I had the same instinct. Somehow I managed to keep myself together. I didn't know if this ghost was Peter Stuyvesant himself or some other poor schmuck, but I tried to communicate an image of the manse in Gramercy Park. I pictured the damage being repaired. Beds, beads of perspiration dotted Annabeth's face. "You're doing great," I murmured. I didn't know if she heard me. She had the expression of somebody arm wrestling a Hyperborean giant, and yes, I've seen that. The smoke thickened. The ghost took on a more definitive shape. He had a broad-brimmed hat, long, stringy hair, a cape, a doublet and puffy breeches, all made from swirling dust particles. A rapier hung at his side. I wondered if we'd raised one of the Three Musketeers. I was starting to fret about where the other two might be. Then I noticed the ghost was leaning on a cane. His right leg ended in a wooden peg. "It's him," Grover whispered in my ear. "They called him Peg-Leg Pete." "Isn't that a cartoon character?" I whispered back. "Different Peg-Leg Pete." "How do you know this?" "I did the assigned reading." I glanced at him. He wasn't kidding. Apparently Annabeth had given him homework on Pete. Either I'd forgotten about it or Annabeth hadn't bothered giving it to me because she knew it was hopeless. "Boys," Annabeth gritted her teeth. "Help!" "Right, focus." I went back to imagining Hecate's house. I broadcast mental pictures of hammers, nails, paint and duct tape. Did they have duct tape in the 17th century? I imagined us all taking a stroll up to Gramercy Park for a fun evening of do-it-yourself home renovation. Hecuba gave us another low growl, a sort of heads up. More shadowy forms were rising from the ground. Soon a crowd of ghosts surrounded us, dozens at least. Grover reined in Nope, who really wanted to meet the smoke people. He must have gotten over his initial fright. His barking was joyous, like, "You smell interesting." The noise didn't help me concentrate. Gale chittered, probably reminding us that we were on the clock. How long had we been here? Minutes? Decades? The ghosts closed in, invading our personal space like we were the newest dead on the block and they needed to size us up. They didn't touch us, though. So far, Gale's goo seemed to be doing its job. Why? The ghosts asked. They didn't like us. Their hostility tinged the air with like sulphur. They knew Annabeth wasn't Hecate, not a goddess to fear, just a teenager with borrowed torches. They crowded around, swirling, sniffing us, held at bay only by Gale's anti-ghoul salve and Annabeth's willpower. Their presence drained the strength from my limbs. I didn't know how Annabeth could stand it. Their thoughts and memories washed over me. I saw New Amsterdam as a young colony, just a few buildings clustered around the southern tip of the island, farmland stretching around us, alongside woods and streams. I felt bitterness. I saw frowning faces, heard insults being shouted in Dutch. Peter and his friends apparently hadn't been well liked. They had been buried here, in what was then the far northern edge of the settlement. They'd been slumbering in their graves for centuries as New York rose around them, burying almost every trace of their lives, eroding the names on their gravestones, making it impossible for them to sleep with all the traffic and construction. Now they were disoriented and angry. I couldn't blame them. Resting in peace wasn't something that happened a lot in Manhattan. I get it, I thought, but we need your help. Follow Annabeth. Work for her. I wasn't sure how helpful I was being. I was too distracted worrying about Annabeth, who must have been taking the brunt of the ghost's anger. The torches burned brighter, turning a deeper blue, almost violet. Annabeth's arms trembled. "You okay?" I asked. I'm good," she managed. I wanted to believe her, but the smoky forms kept multiplying. The whole graveyard seemed to have risen. Hundreds of souls from unmarked graves, their names forgotten, their identities erased over the centuries. They fought in Dutch, English, French and Algonquin, a chaotic chorus I couldn't follow. But the emotions were clear enough. They wanted to tear us apart. They were just waiting for a sign from Peg-Leg Pete. Annabeth straightened. She looked right into the sooty eyes of Peter Stuyvesant. "You will help us," she commanded. "Follow me." Stuyvesant's dust particles churned with resentment, but I felt something else now too. Curiosity, cold amusement, a cruel desire to see how long Annabeth could hold herself together before she broke. His response hissed in my mind. "Go on then, girl." Annabeth turned and led us out of the graveyard. Chapter 32. Passing the torch works out super well. 1 block. That's how far we made it. Annabeth led us across 11th Street, then through Grover's recommended shortcut, a pedestrian path between 2 apartment buildings. The mortals we passed gave us a wide berth. Through the mist, I imagine we looked like a Halloween tour group. Please follow the torches for the Ghosts and Goblins walk. Hecuba and Nope went into border collie mode, with their leashes dragging behind them. They raced around the spirits, making sure they all stayed in a tight herd. I guess that's what hellhounds did down in the underworld, because Nope took to it instinctively. "Nope," he barked every time a ghost strayed. "Nope, nope." There would be no side trips for ice cream on this walking tour. We had just emerged onto 12th Street when Annabeth stumbled. I managed to catch her left arm and keep the torch from dropping. Grover did the same on her right. The ghost surged towards us, then ebbed back when Annabeth regained her balance. I got the feeling they'd been about a half a second away from feeding on our immortal souls. "I made a mistake," Annabeth said. Her breathing was ragged. Her legs wobbled like she'd just climbed all the way to Olympus. "What can we do?" I asked. She shook her head. I'm not going to have enough strength to get there." Gale climbed onto Grover's shoulder. She chittered nervously, tapping her tiny wrist where her tiny watch would have been if she'd had one. We were going too slowly. Goo was a wasting. The ghost swirled around us, seething with bitterness. Pete the musketeer watched like a wolf waiting for the right moment to strike weakened prey. His hand rested on the hilt of his shadowy rapier. Grover and I exchanged a panicked look. If Annabeth was admitting she'd made a mistake, we were in serious trouble. All heroes had fatal flaws. Annabeth's was pride. She always aimed as high as possible, confident she could go even higher. Most of the time she was right, but calling for help after one block? The situation had to be desperate for her to swallow her pride like that. Then I remembered why fatal flaws were called fatal. We couldn't let her get worn out so soon. She was the only one who could direct the ghosts to rebuild the house properly. "Let me take the torches," I said. Hakuba growled. "That's not a great idea," Grover translated. "If you break the summoning—" "I can do it," I insisted. "Walking these guys back to the manse, that I can handle. We need Annabeth fresh when we get there so she can take over." Hakuba made a sound between a grunt and a whimper. "She doesn't know if you can pass the torches from one person to another," Grover said. "No one has ever tried that before." I met Annabeth's eyes. "We can." I figured that, after holding the weight of the sky and trekking through Tartarus together, the two of us were about as in sync as a couple could be. There might not be any I in team, but there was definitely an A for Annabeth and 3 other letters that didn't really stand for anything, so let's forget I said that. The point was, we were great collaborators. I wasn't sure of much else, but I was sure of that. I faced her, nose to nose, and held out my arms to match hers. "It's okay." I wrapped my hands over hers on the torch handles. "Let me help." She loosened her grip and fell back into Grover's arms. The ghosts whirled into an angry storm of dust and smoke, but I kept the torches aloft and channeled my best mental hell puppy voice. "Nope!" The spirits calmed, or at least they went back to their baseline level of homicidal rage. "You're going to follow me to Gramercy Park," I ordered, "and you're going to like it." For the first 0.00035 of a second, I felt pretty confident. The torches weren't that heavy. The hissing voices and emotional onslaught from the dead weren't that bad. But by the time we got to 3rd Avenue, I was starting to think Grover was right. I needed to work out more. The torches felt like anvils. I was running a serious deficit of muscles and stuff. Sweat poured down my back. I realised I wasn't just carrying the torches. I was dragging an entire army of reluctant dead people behind me. They were making it as hard as they could, digging in their ghostly heels. Stuffersont hovered nearby, watching me with amusement, and now this boy thinks he can control us. "Watch me, Pete," I growled back. I kept going, fixing my mind on our destination. The manse. Just get back to the manse. Annabeth seemed a little better, at least. She limped along at my side, her face set in concentration, trying to help me physically shepherd the dead. The hellhounds barked and raced around the edges, nipping at ghostly heels. Grover trotted ahead of us with Gale on his shoulders, blazing a trail through the wilds of the East Village. "This way," he urged, one hoof in front of the other. Our strange procession staggered north. The torches became heavier. The flames scalded my forearms. Every so often, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a random new ghost crawling out of the sidewalk or emerging from a wall to join our parade. Great. For once, I was popular. I lost track of time. My vision blurred. I felt like I was turning to smoke, blending into the spirit mob until I was nothing but jumbled feelings and fuzzy memories. I was vaguely aware that Annabeth had jogged ahead to confer with Grover. "No supplies," Grover was saying. "Should we stop somewhere?" "Don't worry," Annabeth said. "We'll figure it out." I was glad we wouldn't be making that detour. I imagined dragging my army of ghosts into Home Depot and asking where we could find drywall and plaster. The thought distracted me. I tripped on a crack. The torches guttered. The ghosts swarmed me. "Percy!" Annabeth's voice shocked me back into focus. I raised the torches higher. The ghosts retreated, whispering insults. Stuffersont's face was only a swirl of soot, but I was pretty sure he was leering at me. "That was close," Annabeth said. "Just keep going. You're doing great." I staggered on as more and more spirits joined our procession. Traffic sounds became soft and damp like noises heard underwater. Pedestrians parted around us in slow motion, ignoring the torches and angry dead people. Gale barked, helpfully urging me to pick up the pace. The smell of burning polyester was fading as the magic salve on my skin dried out and crumpled off my neck and wrists. "It's fine," Annabeth told me. "It's all fine." Proof positive that things were not fine. "Just get to the manse," I told myself. I repeated those words so often they started to lose meaning. I hallucinated that Hecate was dancing in front of me, coaxing me to follow her. Her face split into 3 fiery guises: the horse, the lion, and the dog. I couldn't for the life of me remember what they symbolised. I just knew I couldn't meet their eyes. I was approaching my final crossroads, like Hecate's school did in 1914. I remembered what Hecate had said at our first meeting. "I devour those who waver before me." She wouldn't help me choose a path. She would just watch to see which version of failure I picked. At my side, the ghost of Peter Stuffersont laughed softly. His peg leg had no substance, but it made an otherworldly clunk whenever it struck the pavement. "Percy, almost there," Annabeth said. "Look." We'd made it to the north end of Irving Place. Ahead of us stretched Gramercy Park West. On our left, only half a block away, rose the grey facade of the manse. I could do this. My legs were as heavy as cast iron, but a surge of anger gave me strength. Hecate didn't reward hesitation. Fine. I growled, probably saying something really inappropriate in Hellhound, and marched straight ahead through the hallucinatory vision of Hecate. We made it to the mansion's gate. Annabeth and Grover hurried to either side of me. They braced my arms, and together we lurched up the cranium stone path. The torch flames guttered again, cooling to a dark red. Somehow we made it to the front porch. The ghosts milled about the yard, waiting for orders or a chance to kill us. They reminded me of large, angry, spectral garden gnomes, which fit right in with the manse's vibe. My turn, Annabeth said. Brave words, but she still looked exhausted. I wasn't any better. We'd barely managed to transfer the torches before. If we tried now, I was afraid we'd end up setting ourselves on fire, burning down the manse, and then getting eaten by garden ghouls. I forced a few words from my dry throat. How about together? Grover started to object, but Hecuba's bark cut him off. Gale added a few urgent chirps. I got the message without a translation. Whatever you're going to do it now. The ghosts were getting restless. They had reached my chosen destination. Now what? Maybe could they rip us into bite-sized pieces? Meanwhile, Nope, oblivious to our danger, was trying to chomp the end of Stufferson's shadow sword. Okay, Annabeth said. Together. She put her arm around my waist. She reached out for the torch in my right hand. Let me do the thinking, she warned. Gladly, I croaked. She took the torch. Wow, that was a relief. Suddenly, only the left side of my body felt like it was dissolving in acid. On my right side, I had Annabeth, which was much better. I put my free arm around her waist. We held each other tight. The torches blazed, heating up again to a bright blue flame. Annabeth faced our surly mob of followers. Fix the house, she said. Then you'll be 3. Behind us, the makeshift front door blasted open. The army of spirits rushed the front porch, parting round us like we were a rock in the rapids, and swept into the manse. Oh, Grover said in a small voice. I'm sure that's fine. Annabeth and I managed to turn so we could watch the spirits' progress. Fortunately, we'd had some practice doing three-legged races at camp. Miniature tornadoes swirled through the great room. The dead cleared the broken glass, repaired the furniture, and painted the walls with sheets of ghostly frost. Above us, more ghosts swept across the building's facade, mending the cracked tombstones and replacing those that had fallen. Percy, Annabeth said weakly, it's going to work. I tried to smile, but even lifting the corners of my mouth felt like too much effort. I stayed focused on the task, fix the house. Otherwise, I let Annabeth do the thinking. The ghosts did all the heavy lifting, but it felt like they were draining the life force right out of me. The more they did, the more my legs shook. Only Stuffersont remained aloof from the uproar. He probably considered himself above menial labour. He floated here and there, monitoring repairs, hissing orders in Dutch and letting his home Jonjans do all the work. Grover, Hecuba and Gale stood in the front yard, stunned into silence. Nope, who must have sensed we needed support, padded behind us, wedged his head between Annabeth's leg and mine, and rested his snout on my shoe. Honestly, that was the best cute puppy assist I could have asked for. I don't know how long the process took. Hours? Centuries? My sight dimmed. My brain wobbled in my skull like a gyroscope. Finally, Annabeth said, It's done. The ghosts belched out of the house in a flood of grey ectoplasm and reassembled in the yard. I looked at their results. The mansion was exactly as it had been when we arrived on Monday. The windows were all fixed. The 3-panelled door gleamed with a new coat of paint. The ghosts had been polished and replaced. The door knockers, which looked as astonished as pieces of metal can look. That was incredible, said the lion. That was horrible, said the horse. Stroop waffles, said the dog. So the door knockers worked again. Yay. Annabeth and I turned to survey the troops. Hundreds of ghosts hung above the lawn like columns of campfire smoke. Stuffersont limped back and forth in front of them, his spectral peg leg clunking against the cranium path. The dead were waiting, but I knew they were at the end of their patience. They felt no sense of accomplishment. They only wanted one thing, release. Also, revenge. Okay, they wanted 2 things. We needed to dismiss them quickly and send them back to their graves. Ready? Annabeth asked me. 1, 2, 3. She started pulling in her torch. I did the same. The idea was simple. Do what Hecate had done. Cross the torches in front of us and hope the spirits turned to dust and went bye-bye. The problem was, my left arm rebelled. I had nothing left. No muscles, no stuff. Just bringing the torch toward my chest felt like trying to close a rusty airplane hangar door with one hand. I took a breath, dug deep to find whatever remained of my strength, and gave it one last shot. "Percy!" Grover asked in alarm. "Percy!" Annabeth said. "Sorry," I muttered. My last shot was a miss. Black spots danced in my eyes. I crumpled to my knees, and the torch fell out of my hand. Chapter 33. We have a good old-fashioned witch burning. It's us. We're the witches. In the demigod business, we have a technical term for situations like this. We call them bad. I collapsed on the porch. The ghosts rushed in, ready to feast. Fortunately, there was Annabeth. That sentence describes a lot of my life, actually. She lunged, snatched the fallen torch before the flames could gut her out completely, and positioned herself between me and the dead. "Get back," she yelled. "Be gone!" She crossed the torches in front of her, the way Hecate had done in Eudora's waterspout. The spirits crashed against the edge of the torchlight and reeled backward, hissing and howling, but they didn't disappear. They raged through the front yard, rattling the fence, then zipped up and down Gramercy Park West, with such force they shook street lamps and peeled flagstones off the sidewalk. Annabeth muttered, "Why aren't they going away?" That sentence also describes a lot of my life. I was too worn out to respond. Maybe we'd messed things up by passing the torches between us. I tried to get up, but my chest hurt. My arms were limp spaghetti. Nope valiantly tried to help by tugging at the hem of my jeans, but it was no use. Grover, Hecuba and Gale rushed to join us on the porch, because that's where all the cool kids who didn't want to get eaten by ghouls were. "Not good, not good, not good," Grover fretted. "What do we do?" Gale barked and ran inside the mansion, though this seemed like a bad time for a chicken carcass break. Hecuba stood her ground, growling at the blizzard of ghosts. "We're going to die," said the lion door knocker. "We'll be fine," said the horse. "I'm going to stick with Stroop Waffles," said the dog. For the moment, the torchlight seemed to be keeping the dead at bay. They tore up the street and ripped limbs off the trees in the park in frustration, but the manse itself appeared to be within the protective radius of the blue fire. We needed to keep it that way. Whatever else happened, we couldn't let the ghosts wreck the mansion and undo all our hard work. Okay, all their hard work, but still. "These are getting heavy." Annabeth's arms shook under the weight of the torches. "I don't know how much longer I can keep the ghosts out." Gale re-emerged from the mansion, dragging a bandolier of little glass vials behind her. She dropped them at Grover's feet and chittered urgently. "She says you both need these." Grover fumbled with the vials, pulled the stopper from one, and dribbled the contents into my mouth. I worried I might turn into Octopus Boy again, develop beast breath, or go full flaming purple armadillo, but I wasn't in any shape to protest. I gulped it down. A surge of warmth rushed through my organs. I recognised the sensation. It was nectar, the drink of the gods. The flavour varied every time I tried it. Usually, the taste reminded me of some favourite form of comfort food. This time, it was candy corn. The taste brought me back to kindergarten. I was trick-or-treating with my mum in our apartment building. Everybody was giving out little bags of candy corn. I guess because there'd been a sale at Dwayne Reed. I got such a stomachache I swore I'd never eat the stuff again. It was a simple memory, but it was enough to clear my head. My arms tingled. I struggled to my feet. While Grover poured nectar into Annabeth's mouth, I managed to pull out Riptide and uncap the blade without decapitating myself. I still felt awful. It would have taken another 20 or 30 vials to get me back to full strength, but I knew that wasn't possible. In small amounts, ambrosia and nectar did wonders for demigods. In large amounts, they could make you spontaneously combust, which didn't fit in with my healthy lifestyle. "Thanks, Grover. Gale." I jabbed my blade at the nearest ghost, who was getting a little too close to the edge of the torchlight. "How's everybody feeling?" "Fine," Grover said. "Just an average night, you know." "Squeak," said Gale. The dogs snarled in their respective sizes, extra large and child's medium. I'm better." Annabeth waved the torches at the spirit mob. "Not great, but I'll manage." Years ago, when she'd been Atlas's prisoner, she'd held up the sky for much longer than I had. I knew she had next-level stamina. Still, I didn't want her carrying those torches any longer than she had to. Oh wait, carrying a torch for someone. Wasn't that an old-fashioned way to say you loved somebody? That was kind of sweet. "Stop that," I told myself. "Focus." "Maybe if we keep holding them off," I suggested, "they'll eventually get bored and drift away." Annabeth frowned. "Until when? Morning? It just got dark. I'm trying to be optimistic here." The ghosts attacked. In wave after wave, they threw themselves at the circle of blue light. Each time one got close to the flames, the spirit disintegrated, only to reform at the far end of the yard. Great, they had multiple lives. Why didn't I have multiple lives? So far, the torches were keeping them at bay, but the ghosts kept trying. With each assault, Annabeth flinched and swayed like she was weathering a gauntlet of punches. Hecuba barked. She says the lead ghost is holding them together, Grover told us. They won't leave before they've broken through. So we're in a standoff, I said. Time is not on my side, Annabeth warned. The torchlight was already starting to dim and cool. Her hair picked up streaks of grey from the light, but she was ageing before my eyes. What did we ever do to them? I grumbled. Besides making them work on Halloween night, what do they want? I was immediately sorry I'd asked. A howl rose from the mob. Frost crackled across Hecate's garden. The ranks of ghosts parted, and Stuyvesant limped forward. So dark and solid now he might have been sketched with a smudge stick. Your heretic souls, his voice whispered in my mind. You must burn. The witch's house must burn. Oh yeah? Grover called back. Well, joke's on you, Pete. Some of us don't have souls. I'll just reincarnate, probably as a pumpkin patch if I die on Halloween, but that's not so bad. For some reason, this failed to discourage Stuyvesant. He drew his coal dust rapier. Witches must burn. He really seemed stuck on that point. I was starting to think that raising a dude from the 1600s to rebuild the mounts might not have been the best plan. This isn't just any witch's house, I said. This place belongs to Hecate, the goddess of magic. You're messing with the wrong real estate. The ghosts shrieked in outrage, nearly rupturing my eardrums. The spirits swirled together into a massive funnel cloud of ice and dust, and then splintered off in every direction, wisps of ghostly grey racing into the night. Even Peg-Leg Pete disappeared. The yard fell silent, except for the crackling of the torches. You think they gave up? I asked. Somewhere down the block, a scream cut through the night. A car honked. Metal crunched against metal. Nope, Annabeth guessed. Nope, barked Nope. When the ghosts came back, they were wearing upgrades. Some shambled along in piles of garbage that formed vaguely human shells of plastic bags, aluminium cans, tattered blankets and fast food boxes. They would have gotten solid grades on SOD NYC's recycled clothing project. Other ghouls had apparently ripped the costumes off unsuspecting trick-or-treaters. I spotted characters from Star Wars, some superheroes, pretty princesses, and a whole bunch of Mickey and Minnie Mouses like they were on their way to work the crowds at Times Square. It was horrifying. Even worse, trailing behind the trash and costume ghosts were actual living people. They moved like they had forgotten how to operate their own bodies. Parents and kids lurched along, hissing in Dutch. They were joined by taxi drivers and bike delivery guys, and in the back of the horde, a police officer mounted on a black horse. The cop wore the face of a jack-o'-lantern, like he had ripped it off an actual pumpkin and attached it to his face, which raised his axe murderer vibe by a factor of 20. His eyes glowed silver. In his hand was a black baton that kept flickering and shifting form, sometimes elongating into a rapier. Stuyvesant himself, now with a badge. We know whose house this is, he said. My mother must pay for her pagan crimes. I glanced at Annabeth. Peter Stuyvesant, son of Hecate. That wasn't in the assigned reading, Grover complained. Annabeth muttered a curse. I didn't know. Will the torchlight keep out physical bodies, do you think? Grrr, said Hecuba, which I took to mean I wouldn't bet your candy corn on it. Guard the doors, I told Annabeth. The rest of us will take down as many as we can. I charged into battle, followed by Grover, 2 hellhounds, and an angry polecat. Chapter 34. We fight for Hecate, and also dead fish. Generally, attacking children with a sword is considered a no-no, even if they are possessed by angry ghosts. You won't get any points on the heroism leaderboards. This made me worried about wading into the army of the dead. Trash zombies? No problem. I sliced and diced my way through them, reducing them to mounds of plastic bags, fruit rinds and greasy cardboard. Spirits in empty costumes? Also no problem. Die, Disney princesses. Die, generic Star Wars characters. Unfortunately, this only slowed the spirits down. They drifted up from their ruined shells and began reforming as soon as I moved on to the next shambling group of baddies. The possessed humans were trickier to deal with. Normally, my celestial bronze blade would pass harmlessly through mortals. It was meant for monster killing, but I didn't want to risk hurting the spirits' hosts. I tried to work around them, leaving them to Hecuba and Nope, who jumped on the delivery bikers and taxi drivers, knocking them down and subduing them with kisses. That would teach the ghosts. Grover helped with the sorting. He danced around the edge of the mob, playing his panpipes. Once he made it to the gate, he skipped backward toward the park, blasting out the Ghostbusters theme song, which was guaranteed to enrage anyone with mortal ears. The possessed humans began peeling off from the other ghouls and staggering after our pan-powered Piper. Gale ran around the yard, biting ankles and chattering insults, but this didn't seem to have much effect. Annabeth held the doors, using the torches to drive back any ghosts who got close. I imagined she was concentrating on one simple command: nope, because that seemed to be the word of the week. Some of the trash ghouls managed to climb the facade of the house. They rattled the windows and shook the iron filigree, but they weren't able to cause any real damage before disintegrating under the power of Hecate's torches and Annabeth's formidable nopeness. So far, Annabeth seemed to be holding her own. I knew how much those torches were taking out of her, though. We didn't have much time. Unfortunately, the ghosts kept reforming as fast as we cut them down. They could probably do this all night. We could not. These dead didn't seem to have the same potency as Hecuba's Trojans. When they touched me, I didn't collapse into a dream vision. I saw snippets of things, but mostly it just hurt, like being snapped on the skin with a rubber band over and over and over. At first, it didn't bother me much, but after a while the pain started to build. Gale's anti-ghoul salve had clearly worn off. I wished I could drink more nectar, even if it was candy corn flavoured, but I'd left the bandolier on the porch with Annabeth. Meanwhile, the only possessed mortal seemingly unaffected by Grover's theme music was Policeman Pete. He'd probably never seen the Ghostbuster sequels and so didn't have any cultural context for the rage they inspired. He trotted back and forth on his black horse, directing his troops of Mandalorians, Cinderellas and garbage mounds. His rapier baton flickered at his side. His eyes glowed in his borrowed jack-o'-lantern face. His trash and costume minions closed around me. Their smoky grey fingers slithered across my face and arms. Every time they made contact, I felt that sharp snap of pain. My whole body was as raw as an open blister. I was slowing down. Their voices echoed in my skull. Hate, cold, unworthy to live. They were a ton of fun, these dead guys. My knees were ready to buckle. If I went down under a mob of angry ghosts, I knew I wasn't going to get up again. Then a different voice slipped into my brain. Hey, kid, tag us in. I didn't know how, but it was Janet the eel. I looked around. Of course, there were no morays in the front yard. That was ridiculous. We're still in our tank, seaweed brain, said Janet. You don't get to call me that, I fought back. Okay then, alley boy, tag us in. What do you mean? You want to talk or you want help? At the moment, help sounded better. Okay, sure, I thought, but how? The eels were all about show, don't tell. From the manse's entrance, 4 streaks of yellow shot out around Annabeth like streamers from a confetti cannon. Charge! Fought Janet. For Hecate! Fortunato replied. For dead fish, Larry said. For more dead fish, said Bigwig. The most disturbing thing was that I could distinguish the voice of each eel. The door knockers cheered them on. Go, my eels of doom! Go, my 17 snakes of the apocalypse! Key lime pie! Each eel was encased in a sheaf of water. They zipped through the air as easily as if they were in the open sea. Was this Poseidon's doing? Hecate's magic? Some unholy union of the two? I had no idea. I guessed moray eels could pick up all sorts of tricks from living in Hecate's mansion and having their mucus scraped to make potions. They wove through the ghostly crowd, boring holes in the chests of Star Wars characters and Disney princesses alike. They seemed to know better than to kill the mortals, but getting slammed in the face by a 60-pound eel could put down even the hardiest New York taxi driver. I felt a spark of optimism. Maybe we could turn the tide. My hopefulness didn't last long. The eels had no better luck banishing the spirits than we did. They could cause chaos. They could knock delivery drivers unconscious. Yet the dead simply rose again in columns of grey dust and looked for new hosts. Annabeth fell to one knee. She held the torches aloft and yelled, "Back!" with as much energy as she could muster, but she was losing strength. Grover had done too good a job attracting the possessed families of trick-or-treaters. They were now chasing him along the sidewalk across the street, trying to surround him. He played a few more bars of the Ghostbusters theme song, yelled, "Help!" and then continued to play. As slow as the possessed mortals were, I doubted my friend could evade them much longer. Hecuba and Nope panted as they leapt from ghoul to ghoul. So much body slamming and kissing took a lot of energy. Gale burrowed through the trash ghosts, eating all the rotten fruit she could find, but they hardly seemed to notice. I had to change tactics. Maybe if I struck off the head of this ghostly army. "Pete," I yelled, "get your ghosts off my lawn." I figured my buddy Garas, the god of old age, would approve of my cranky shouting. I also suspected I might not be seeing Garas again, since I was likely to die right now in my prime. Also, if this was my prime, that was a whole nother level of sad. Officer Stuyvesant turned his horse in my direction. His axe murderer jack-o'-lantern mask grinned, because that's all it could do. He raised his rapier baton and clopped toward me in a leisurely fashion. He was in no hurry. No, the longer we lived, we living beings fought, the weaker we got. I sliced and kicked and punched my way toward the horseman. Each time a ghost touched me, I lost more strength. Their emotions and memories washed over me. I saw myself racked by pain on my deathbed. I felt a coarse noose being slipped over my neck while a crowd jeered. A musket ball ripped through my padded woolen doublet, piercing my chest, and blood soaked through my clothes. Good times in ye oldie New Amsterdam. I must have sliced through enough costume ghouls to fill a discount Halloween warehouse. They just kept coming. My celestial bronze blade didn't seem to do anything but make them angrier. I searched for some kind of water source I could use, sprinklers, sewer lines, but I was already too weak. A sword, stubbornness and cranky comments would have to do. Behind me I heard Annabeth yelling at ghosts to back off. At least that meant she was still conscious. The Moray Eel aerial squadron zoomed around the yard, causing damage and consternation among the ghouls. Grover kept piping his theme song. I could do this. I waded through the dead. My teeth chattered. My feet felt like ice blocks. "'Twas a mistake to summon me," Stuyvesant's voice whispered in my mind. "On this night of all nights, witchcraft and devilry, thinking you could control us with my mother's torches. She is the queen of abominations. Her servants must all burn." I'd heard of earworms, but his voice was more like a brain eel. Apologies to my Moray friends. It locked its jaws around my cerebellum and refused to let go. I didn't understand everything Pete said. His accent was antique, his English heavily skewed, but there was something very New York about his tone, hard, disdainful, unimpressed. I could easily imagine him banging on a car hood and yelling, "Watch where you're going, I'm haunting here." I kept marching around him, toward him, my sword raised. As I got closer, I could see the police officer's eyes, glassy and unresponsive behind the jack-o'-lantern mask. I tried to reach out to the horse's mind, urging him to throw his rider. Usually, horses like me. It's a Poseidon thing. But this one wasn't interested, maybe because he was currently possessed. "Manhattan has become a monstrosity," Stuyvesant said. "This is my mother's legacy. Crossroads have ever been in domain, and all her roads lead to evil." Clearly the dude had some issues to work through, but I imagined he would see therapy as another form of witchcraft. Stuyvesant swept his rapier at my head. I met the blade with Riptide, but I was more exhausted than I realised, or maybe Stuyvesant was just too strong. My sword flew out of my hand. I faltered, barely avoiding another rapier slice. "Percy!" Annabeth yelled. Her voice sounded miles away. The ghosts piled on top of me, dragging me down with sheer numbers. I fell backward onto the cranium stone path, looking up at the black horse now towering above me. "Die," said Stuyvesant's voice in my head. "Join us in the grave." His horse reared, then brought down both front hooves to crush my face. Chapter 35. I am saved by my own doofusness. Turns out dying has a theme song. It's called Strawberry Fields Forever. The horse's hooves were an inch from my face when that song blasted from a nearby car horn. The noise startled some of the ghosts into evaporating. The horse pivoted on its back legs, giving me time to roll sideways just as Janet, the eel, hit Peter Stuyvesant in the face, nearly knocking him out of his saddle. I got to my feet, gasping and weaponless but uncrushed. Pulling up to the curb was a white delivery van that looked very familiar. My vision was swimming, but I knew what words were painted on the side of the van. Delphi, Strawberry, Service. I knew I'd forgotten something important. Again. We'd invited our friends to a Halloween party tonight and never cancelled it. You see, kids, absent-mindedness can save your life. The side panel door rolled open and costumed demigods poured out. Connor Stoll led the way, wearing a prisoner's orange jumpsuit with fake manacles on his ankles and wrists. "Dude, your yard decorations are fire!" "They're real," I yelled. "Real ghosts." More demigods emerged from the van. Clovis from the Morpheus cabin, wearing a nightgown, nightcap and slippers, which was not very different from how he usually lounged at camp. Harley from Hephaestus, the youngest of our campers, encased in a celestial bronze Iron Man suit he'd probably made himself. Valentina Diaz from Aphrodite, dressed in a black 1940s evening gown with white gloves, a broad-brimmed hat, and 20 different strings of pearls around her neck. Valentina scanned the ghostly horde. Gross. Can we fight them? Yes, please, Annabeth yelled from the porch. Our friends charged into battle. Clovis waddled among the possessed people, yawning as he went. Coming from a child of Morpheus, that yawn was more infectious than the plague. The possessed crumpled on the spot and began to snore. Meanwhile, Connor and Valentina and half a dozen other demigods waded into combat. Connor was pretty effective with his costume manacles. Harley was a walking battering ram in his bronze man-suit. Valentina's pearls doubled as lassos, garroting trash spirits, slashing costumes into shreds. Gale, Hecuba and Nope bounded around the yard, alternating biting the dead and sniffing the newcomer demigods like, "Oh, hi, are you my friend?" More passengers emerged from the van. I spotted Juniper with some other dryads and satyrs. She heard Grover across the street shouting for help, got a fierce look in her eyes, and handed one of the other dryads a big terracotta vase she was carrying. I guessed it contained a cutting from her life-source juniper bush. "Hold my pot," she ordered. Then she marched off to help her boyfriend. I was feeling relieved until a rapier slashed the air just shy of my nose. Officer Pete had regained control of his horse. "You must die," Stuyvesant said. "Witches, heretics, my mother's minions." "Dude, give it a rest," I grumbled, dodging another swing. My sword was nowhere to be seen. I patted my pockets. The pen would eventually return to me, but it hadn't yet, and I didn't have time to wait. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Annabeth on the porch, holding the spirit army at bay. She remained on one knee, her arms sinking lower and lower as she struggled to maintain the torches. I needed to help her, but Officer Pete was still in my face. "Little help here?" I called out. The eels flew in, wrapping themselves around Pete's arms and neck, accessorizing his blue uniform with lovely yellow coils. Stuyvesant gurgled and struggled, trying to shake them. Then a large figure came around the front of the van. I guess I hadn't seen him yet because he'd been fighting across the street. It was our old friend Argus, camp security officer, van chauffeur, and the most useful combat Uber driver you could ever want. He had bright blue eyes all over his massive body. For Halloween, he'd chosen the Amelia Earhart look. He donned old-fashioned pilot's joppers, leather boots, and a long white scarf. Across his bare chest and arms, he'd covered each eye with an aviator's goggle, so he looked like a massive suction cup experiment gone wrong. He strode toward Officer Pete, got his arms under the belly of the horse, and lifted it over his head. Pete, eels and all. Argus, by the way, is pretty strong. I wasn't an expert on proper horse-lifting techniques, but Argus loved the Pegasi at camp, so I figured he would be careful not to harm the animal. The horse, bewildered and possessed, just kept moving its legs through the air, getting nowhere, while Stuyvesant cursed in Dutch and demanded that we all burn in the eternal fires of wherever bad Dutch people went. Argus looked at me and pointed his chin toward Annabeth. "Go!" I sprinted for the porch. Our friends had evened up the fight, but the spirits still wouldn't go away. All we could do was distract them, take away their toys, people, costumes, garbage, and try to avoid getting our own souls drained to the dregs. We needed to end this. I made it to Annabeth's side. She was so dazed she almost brained me with a torch before she realised I wasn't a ghost. "Hi," she wheezed. "We need to cross the torches," I said. "Both of us. Together." "We tried that." "Again," I said, "while Stuyvesant is distracted." Pete peeled Bigwig the eel off his jack-o'-lantern face and tossed him aside. Argus's arms were starting to shake under the weight of the horse and rider. "We can't risk it," Annabeth said. "The spirits will break through." The ghosts made her point by rushing the front door. The fires held them at bay, but the whole house shook under the assault. Annabeth staggered, her back now against the door. The door-knockers screamed and pleaded for their lives. Annabeth tried to cross the torches by herself, but she didn't have the strength. Too heavy." "Hey, wise girl," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Be wise. I don't know much, but I do know we're stronger together. Always." I'd finally found an argument Annabeth couldn't counter. She grunted assent and let me take the torch from her left hand. The world seemed to gutter and darken along with the torchlight. The spirits swirled around us, howling in triumph as Hecate's power wavered. "Hurry!" Annabeth yelled. Standing side by side, we pulled in our torches. It was like arm wrestling a tornado. I sensed that we only had seconds before the fires went out for good. The torches weren't meant to be shared by two people. Then again, Annabeth and I were more than just two people. We were a pair, and when we stood at the crossroads, we did it together. I screamed and forced my torch inward. Annabeth did the same. Our friends kept fighting. Grover's panpipes had stopped. I didn't know if that was a good sign or a bad one. The The flames of our torches now burned as one, just a little more until we could cross the handles. But the torches fought us, repelling each other like some same polarity magnets. "You cannot!" cried the ghost of Stuyvesant. "Hecate must never—" With one final burst of strength, we crossed the torches. A blast of white-hot energy rippled outward from the porch. The ghosts dissolved into air. The police officer slumped in his saddle. The horse freaked out and whinnied. "Why am I flying?" before Argus set him gently down and let him gallop away with his unconscious rider. Trash and empty costumes blew across the yard. The people Clovis had put to sleep started to wake up again. The last ghost standing was the coal-dust cloud of Peter Stuyvesant, now without a human host. He was dissolving slowly, returning to the shadows, but he kept wailing, his angry voice turning desperate, almost heartbroken. "I cannot go," he howled. "I cannot allow her to stay in my city." Clovis walked over to the fading ghost. He frowned at the swirling coal particles like they were the remnants of a dream, something that had made sense right until the moment he woke up. "It's okay, cousin," Clovis said. "It's a big city now. It belongs to all of us. You've done your part. Now you deserve a rest. Bring it in." Clovis embraced the ghost, and with a long sigh, Stuyvesant let go and dissolved. Connor Stoll sauntered towards us, grinning happily. His manacles must have come off in the melee. "You guys sure know how to throw a party," he said. "Can we come in now, or what?" Chapter 36. I skipped the celebration. I'm not going to say it was a wild party, not as wild as fighting the dead anyway, but it was a good party, because we were still alive and with our friends. The Apollo cabin provided the tunes, compliments of Austin Lake and his Megatech portable sound system. We even convinced him to play some pop instead of freestyle jazz fusion, which was his normal go-to. Connor supplied snacks and beverages. I was pretty sure they'd been pilfered from the camp commissary, but I wasn't going to complain since it limited the wear and tear on Hecate's kitchen. The nymphs and satyrs brought the boogie. Dryads can dance for days, which is not what you might expect from evergreens and shrubbery. The satyrs busted moves that would have been impressive in any German disco. Grover played his panpipes along with some of the songs, kind of a new sound for the weekend tracks, but he made it work. Meanwhile, Argus stayed by the entrance, glowering and making sure things didn't get out of hand. We were used to him being our chaperone, so that was cool. A few times trick-or-treaters even knocked on the front door. How they found the house through the mist, I'm not sure, but they all complimented us on the wild, talking door-knockers. Argus gave the kids candy from our stash and sent them on their way before they could ask too many questions about his bare-chested 100-eye aviator costume. The animals seemed to enjoy themselves. The moray eels only returned to their tank after showing us their favourite line dances and being bribed with extra helpings of frozen fish. Hakuba turned out to be a Beyoncé fan, judging from how she howled during Texas Hold'em. Gale got into a long conversation with Juniper about the amazing potions one could make out of juniper oil. Nope made dozens of new friends and managed not to pee on any of them. Maybe that was something he only did with his favourite trio. I was sorry Mrs. O'Leary wasn't here. Seeing her so briefly on Tuesday had just made me miss her more, but I guess it was for the best. I wasn't sure Hakuba and Mrs. O'Leary would have gotten along. 2 dog mamas in one house might have caused problems. I told myself I would see my hellhound friend soon enough in California. I had to stay optimistic. Most importantly, we managed to have a good time without re-trashing the mounts. The only damage that occurred was when Valentina Diaz demonstrated her pearl necklaces of death and took out a light fixture. Thankfully, Harley was able to fix it. It's always good to have the Hephaestus cabin around. "Who are you supposed to be anyway?" I asked Valentina. She looked at me like I was from Mars. "Coco Chanel, obviously. Scariest problematic fashion icon ever. Boo!" I nodded like I knew what she was talking about. I'd seen how easily she could decapitate ghouls with her jewellery, and I didn't want to make her angry. Later, I wandered upstairs and found Annabeth on a 3rd-storey terrace that looked out over Gramercy Park. I didn't even know the house had a terrace, but since the place was magic, I didn't question it. "Want some company?" I asked. She patted the empty space next to her. We sat in silence. It was nice to be able to do that with Annabeth. We never felt the need to be witty or cool with each other. We could just be ourselves. That was enough. "I almost got us killed tonight," she said. That was neither witty nor cool, and I could tell it had been bothering her. "You're being too hard on yourself," I said. She shook her head. I heard Stuyvesant's voice, thinking I could summon a spirit like him on Halloween, thinking I could handle those torches by myself. That was a mistake, like he said. I had a feeling she wasn't such a fan of Peter Stuyvesant anymore, and honestly, same. "It worked out," I said. "The house got fixed." "Yes, but—" She shuddered. "My fatal flaw got in the way again. If I'd lost you because of my own pride." I took her hand. Her fingers were cold. You're not getting rid of me that easy. We've all got our fatal flaws, right? If yours is hummus. She laughed weakly. Hubris. That's what I said. I'm fine with it. It balances out my flaw of being too modest about my incredible dance moves. Nice try. Besides, I gotta believe we're a good team because we make each other's fatal flaws into slightly less fatal flaws, like maybe even fatal strengths. She squeezed my hand. That doesn't even make sense, seaweed brain, but I appreciate the thought. So, you're saying I shouldn't feel guilty? None of us should. Grover's fatal flaw is apparently strawberry milkshakes, right? But sometimes life gives you strawberry milkshakes. Then you gotta count on your friends to look out for you. We're a team. How many times have you propped me up? I've lost count. Exactly. She studied my face. You'd think she would have known it pretty well by now, but she seemed surprised, like she saw something on it she'd never noticed before. What? I asked. Queso on my chin? No, she said. Well, actually, yes, but I was thinking you're a pretty smart guy. Could you say that again? I must have misheard you. She pushed me playfully. I mean it, and I can tell you're planning something. All that history about Hecate and her school, all the ghosts and regrets hanging around this place. We repaired the house, but we're not done yet, are we? No, I agreed. I told her what I was planning to say to Hecate when she got home in the morning. Annabeth raised an eyebrow. Risky? Yeah, I think you and Grover should clear out first. I don't want this to blow up in your faces if she doesn't take it well. Hey, what did you just say about propping each other up? We're not going anywhere. I let out a breath I'd been holding for too long. Okay, if you're sure. She leaned against me. I actually feel better now. Thanks for talking it through, and for doing the right thing, even if it is risky. You want to get back to the party? Nah, she kissed me. I'm good. We sat for a while together, and I had to agree, we were pretty good. Chapter 37. I play with purple fire. There should be a rule that goddesses can never come home before 8 a.m. Hecate blazed into the mansion at exactly 5:32. I knew this because when I shot awake to the sound of trumpets and roaring flames, I found the goddess stepping through a fiery portal into the great room. Behind her, just for an instant, I saw a glowing golden clock, the one in Grand Central Station. The image of the clock hands, set to such an offensive time, was burned into my retinas. Why Hecate had decided to portal from a train station just up the street, I had no idea. Maybe she liked the coffee at Café Grumpy. I have returned, Hecate announced, as if we might have missed that fact. Her voice shook the living room. We all reacted in our own particular ways. Annabeth got to her feet, rubbed her eyes and bowed to the goddess, like this was something she did every morning. I tried to rise, became entangled in my sleeping bag and fell sideways onto a coffee table. Grover leapt into the air like a startled cat. As for the animals, Hecuba and Gale took things in stride. The hellhound stretched, shook herself, then plodded over to sniff Hecate and found out where she'd been. The polecat climbed the goddess's dress, settled around her shoulders, and let loose a welcome home fart. Nope, who had never met the goddess, decided, nope. He hid behind Annabeth's legs. Hecate looked like she'd had quite a Halloween. Something red was splattered on her orange gown. Maybe wine, maybe blood. Maybe, I didn't want to know. Confetti covered her shoulders like rainbow snow. An overflowing plastic jack-o'-lantern bucket hung from her wrist. When she bent down to pet Hecuba, Smarties and Reese's Pieces spilled out. She was also rocking her three-headed beast form, with some terrifying modifications. Someone had face-painted the horse's visage to look like a rainbow pony. The lion's head wore a cheap mask of some old politician's face. Gave me a second. Richard Nixon, that's the guy. The dog's head wasn't in costume, but it grinned and panted and drooled like it had just run 10 miles and needed a bowl of water. Gale scurried down the goddess's arm and burrowed into the candy bucket, probably looking for chicken carcasses. Hecate straightened. She scanned the great room, looking for anything out of place. She zeroed in on the hellhound puppy, cringing behind Annabeth. Nothing escaped the keen gaze of the goddess. Who is that? She asked. This is Nope, Annabeth said. We found him abandoned in an alley. Hecuba was nice enough to adopt him. Hecate's three heads all tilted in sync. Hecuba was nice. Hecuba barked, a tone of challenge in her voice. No, of course, Hecate said. I'm just surprised. Come here, little one. Nope cautiously slinked out from his safe space and padded over to the goddess. Hecate scratched behind his ear, which seemed to melt his fears. He thumped his leg and peed happily on the carpet. Nope, he barked. What a good boy, Hecate said. Grover cleared his throat. He, says he'll call you third mum. Aw, Hecate said. He's trying to say triple mum. That's so cute. Well, if Hecuba has adopted you, I am happy to have you in the family. Her form shimmered and changed into her at-home appearance, a single-faced, middle-aged lady in yoga pants and a t-shirt. She drifted through the room, running her fingers across the furniture. So, Percy Jackson, did you have any difficulties? I'd been preparing for this conversation, but I'd been planning to have it when I was awake. Nothing we couldn't handle, I started. I did want to ask... Aha! Hecate shouted, startling Gale out of the jack-o'-lantern. The goddess scooped up a plastic container from behind the couch. Somebody's empty soda bottle from the party. Judging from the orange residue in the bottom, I figured it was Connor Stoll's. He had a thing for sun-kissed zero sugar. What is this? Hecate demanded. Trash? Her silhouette blazed with purple fire. Nope whimpered and hid behind Hecuba. Grover yelped. We can explain. The goddess laughed. The flames died. I'm kidding. She grinned mischievously. You had some friends over. I could expect nothing less to celebrate my holiest of nights. Don't worry about it. The bottle turned to ash in her fingers. But seriously, plastic containers aren't good for the earth. You should use celestial bronze or ceramic. Got it? I calmed my nerves by imagining kicking Connor in the pants. Could I, My pets look happy, Hecate continued. The manse is in good condition. You remembered to feed the eels? I had a flashback to Janet and the boys doing the Macarena the night before. Of course, I said. The eels are good, Then I am pleased, Hecate announced. You have earned my recommendation letter. She wasn't making it easy for me to get a word in. With a flourish of her wrist, a scroll appeared in her hand. I spent a long time writing this. I think you will love it. She handed me the parchment. Even before I opened it, I was relieved. If Hecate had taken the time to write anything, it was already better than the letter I'd gotten from Ganymede. He'd given me a blank piece of paper that I had to fill in myself. I opened the scroll. It was done in red ink, in cursive, which made it almost impossible for my dyslexic eyes to decipher. But I finally puzzled out. To whom it may concern, I recommend Percy Jackson for things. Sincerely, Hecate, the goddess of three forms, lady of witchcraft, queen of the darkness, keeper of mysteries, ultimate power over ghosts and spirits, almighty sovereign of the shadows. I could have argued that the signature was longer than the actual letter, or that things could have meant a death sentence, torture, or extra homework. Instead I said, Thank you, Lady Hecate, but before we leave... Oh, yes, I know, she assured me. Never fear, I will definitely be calling you for pet-sitting services in the future. Now, if there's nothing else... I glanced at Hecuba and Gale, who were staring at me like, Dude, you promised. Even Grover and Annabeth were waiting for my cue. I got the feeling they wouldn't blame me if I bowed out gracefully. Then it occurred to me that, whether Hecate knew it or not, she was offering me another crossroads, a temptation just as dangerous as the strawberry milkshake. It would be too easy to leave now with my recommendation letter. It would be 100% safer. It would also be wrong. There is something else, I said. Hecate frowned. Oh? Everything is fine now, I said. But the week wasn't fine. We owe you the truth. I told her the whole story, from the strawberry apocalypse, to finding Nope, to Hecuba's shadow world excursion, to Gale's indentured servitude at the perfume shops, to our Halloween hijinks with Peter Burn the Heretic's Stuyvesant. While I spoke, Hecate remained absolutely still. When I finished, she glanced to either side as if she'd found herself standing at her own crossroads and, for once, had no idea where she was. That is, she considered her words, quite a story. I did not take you for a fool, Percy Jackson. Why would you confess this? Why should I not incinerate you? You could, I agreed, but the truth is, we didn't take care of Hecuba and Gale. They took care of us. Hecuba needs more freedom. She needs your trust. Gale too. She should be allowed to practice alchemy in her own lab. Gale squeaked. Right, I said, with assistance, with opposable thumbs. The purple flames flickered again around Hecate's body. You dare to make demands of me? Annabeth and Grover tensed. I got the feeling they were preparing to jump in front of me, to shield me from Hecate's wrath. I couldn't let it come to that. Somehow I held the goddess's gaze. I didn't even wet my pants, because heroism... I'm trying to show you the best path, I said. Whether you take it, that's up to you. But Grover drinking that strawberry potion and tearing up the manse, in a way, is the best thing that could have happened. I think on some level you meant for it to happen. We got the pets back, but now we understand what they need. We repaired the mansion, but its foundation has been cracking for over a century. Our architect, Annabeth, figured that out. You've got a ghost problem, old regrets, old grudges. We saw that last night when we met your son, Pete. Hecate closed her eyes. Was that a tear tracing down the side of her nose? Peter was not my best attempt at parenting. Her expression hardened again. "But how dare you presume?" "Just hear me out," I pleaded. "We owed it to you to fix what we broke, but the manse is still broken. I know how you can repair it, to make it worthy of you." I gestured at the pets. "And your family. Consider it a request, not a demand." Hecate's flaming aura remained at simmer. Her eyes seemed to drill into my soul, trying to figure out how I could be so brash as to talk to a goddess this way. It was not the first time a god had looked at me like that. Finally, she barked out a brittle laugh. "You have surprised me, Percy Jackson," she said. "That does not happen often." She glanced at Nope, who was still hiding behind his dog mama, Hecuba. "I suppose you have brought me a new family member," the goddess conceded, "which means I owe you a boon in return. Speak, and I will decide whether it is something I can grant, or whether I must feed you to all my eels." I told Hecate my idea. Chapter 38. I accidentally liquefy my guidance counsellor. "You're alive," said Eudora when I walked into her office on Monday morning. "You don't have to sound so surprised." No, I'm not. All right, yes, I am surprised. "How did you do it?" I sat down next to Sicky Frog and told Eudora about our Halloween walking tour with the dead. Judging from the salt water that trickled down her hairdo, just hearing about it made Eudora feel anxious. "That's terrifying." She shook her head. "And the recommendation letter?" I showed her the parchment. She spent a long time reading it, lovingly caressing the words until I started to wonder if she was looking for any sign that Hecate might have mentioned her. Annabeth Grover and I had ended up spending the rest of the weekend at the manse, partly because Hecate wanted us to hang around so she could hear more details about our plan, and partly, I think, because she was holding us hostage in case she changed her mind about feeding us to the eels. Also, it gave her a couple extra days of complimentary pet sitting, but we didn't mind that. Walking Hecuba, Gale and Nope had been something I actually looked forward to, as long as Hecuba didn't drag me through the shadow world into random department stores. During our time with her, Hecate had mentioned Eudora several times. I didn't want to tell my counsellor how many curse words had been sprinkled through those conversations until the goddess finally calmed down. Eudora looked up and signed contentedly. "That's her writing, all right. Oh, Percy, what a triumph. This will look wonderful with your college application. And if New Rome doesn't work out, well, this could get you into any number of excellent technical schools." New Rome will work out. I only need one more letter, right?" "Of course." She traced her fingers over the red cursive. I started to worry she might keep the document as a memento, so I figured I should break my other news. "Also," I said, "Hecate owed me a boon, and I collected." Eudora's eyes widened behind her bottle-thick glasses. "A boon? Oh my, what did you ask for? Can I see it? Is it a lock of her hair? An autographed photo?" "Even better," I said. I convinced her to reopen her magic school. Eudora melted into water. That's not a metaphor. She actually dissolved into a large puddle all around her office chair. I stood, worried that I'd killed her. Did I need to dive in and save her? I wasn't a registered lifeguard. My job was ocean, not saving Narads from their own puddles. "Hello," I called. "Are you okay down there?" The puddle rippled. It bubbled and then seeped together into a waterspout that got taller and taller until Eudora stood before me, fully herself again. I wondered how her shell-dew liquefied, not to mention her glasses. I can't believe this," she sobbed. Did I hear you right?" "Yeah, I convinced her to give it another shot. Like you said, there are so many potential students in the world and they don't all belong at camp." I suppressed a shudder, thinking about the Araean naiads who I definitely wouldn't want showing up at our campfire sing-along with their spritz bottles of fancy water. "They need the school," I said, "and Hecate needs the school. The manse hasn't been right since she shut it down. What's more, Hecate could use the help. She's great at offering a crossroads. She's not so great at ushering people through them. She needs somebody who can advise her students, guide their choices, let them move on when they finish their studies." "Does that mean—" Eudora's voice was no more than a squeak. "She's rehiring you as her admissions director, full time." Then I added quickly, "But only after you've done helping me out with this semester, of course." "Heep!" Eudora forgot about etiquette and personal boundaries. She came around the desk to hug me. She picked me up, swung me around and then put me down and did a happy jig. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "It's okay," I grinned. "Totally fine. Just keep doing a great job helping me get into college, okay?" "Oh, I will. I will get you into all the colleges. Just New Rome would be great." "New Rome it is. Oh." She danced around the room, hugged her office chair, and then tried to hug Sicky Frog. She seemed to have forgotten all about me. That was okay. I figured my work there was done, so I headed to first period, where I doubted the teacher would be so happy to see me. I made it through my day somehow. though I may have fallen asleep in class once. Okay, 3 times. After dismissal, I started heading back to Gramercy Park, thinking I should walk a certain flatulent polecat and 2 hellhounds who would really need a pee. I was kind of sad when I realised I didn't have to do that anymore. On the bright side, I could go home, but first I stopped by the cracked teapot. My mum was standing by her usual table, rubbing her back. She was staring at her computer screen as if it had offended her. "Writer's block?" I asked. "Percy!" She hugged me tight, though she did not pick me up, and spin me around, which wouldn't have been good for her or me or the baby. With Grover's help, I'd sent her a note by Wind Spirit on Saturday morning, just to let her know I was alive, but still, it was great to see her in person. "Not writer's block," she said. "Writer's back." She rubbed her lower spine. "How did it go with Hecate? Tell me everything." I gave her the rundown while we ordered another pot of tea and I ate a cookie. Again, I felt lucky I didn't spend every day writing here, or I'd eat way too much sugar, which, to be honest, I did anyway. When I finished my story, my mum beamed. "You did something wonderful, Percy." "Yeah, well, if you ever change your mind about studying witchcraft, I know a goddess." She laughed. "Not likely. I'm happy with my choices. But what you did for Eudora, and Hecate, and the animals, you left them in a better place than you found them, and happier. That's a very Percy thing to do, and I am proud of you." I was way too old and cool to be affected by a compliment from my mum. I didn't blush or fidget or anything. I tried to say something, but I had a lump in my throat. Probably just a piece of cookie. "So, are you coming home tonight?" my mum asked. "Yeah," I said. "Is it okay to have Grover and Annabeth over? Maybe Juniper? She discovered that plants ride free on the Long Island Railroad because nobody notices them." "Of course," my mum said. "It's been ages since I've seen Juniper, but you might want to do your laundry before they come over." "Oh, right." My mum had stopped doing my laundry this year. She said I needed practice doing it myself. So far I was getting a lot of practice letting it pile up. I was probably also getting practice letting new life forms develop in the hamper. "Sure," I said. "And I'd love help getting the living room tidied up," she added. "And—" "Got it," I said. "The usual chores. I don't suppose you'll write me a college recommendation letter for doing them." "They wouldn't believe me. I'm too biased about how wonderful you are, and you'll be even more wonderful when you do those chores. Now, I really ought to finish this chapter, or I'll never hit my word count for the day. See you at home?" I headed back to the apartment. Even though I had laundry and vacuuming to do, I found myself smiling. Sometimes chores aren't so bad, especially when it means getting ready for a family dinner. Chapter 39. I get my favourite dessert. Annabeth dropped by early to help make dinner with my mum, my stepdad and me. Grover and Juniper showed up about an hour later. Being thoughtful, Grover brought my mum a potted orchid. Being a dryad, Juniper brought a juniper seedling, meaning part of her life source. I hoped we wouldn't get confused and end up planting juniper in a pot by mistake. Otherwise, she'd end up having to live at the Jackson Blofis apartment. If the orchid had a name, Grover didn't introduce them. I hadn't seen my stepdad Paul all week, so he filled me in on what was happening at his high school, all the funny stories about his colleagues and his students. The only thing I regretted about having Paul in the family was that I'd never gotten to have him as a teacher. I suspected I would have enjoyed his class. He cracked us all up talking about his friend Mr. Bigley. Yeah, real name. Also got halfway through his PowerPoint presentation on the periodic table before realising he was showing the kids a slideshow of his family trip to the Grand Canyon. "And I heard you saw Mr. Brunner," Paul added. "You can call him Chiron," I said. "Everybody here knows." "Oh, right." Paul grinned sheepishly. It was sometimes hard to keep track of who knew about who in Greek mythology world. Well, I'm glad he finished up at Alternative High. He's supposed to sub for me next Thursday when I have jury duty. I tried to imagine Chiron teaching Paul's class. It was almost as weird as imagining Paul on jury duty. If he got impanelled, Paul would probably have the whole jury performing scenes from Shakespeare within a few days. Chiron would have Paul's students sparring with swords, which Paul would probably be fine with. "Juniper, dear," my mum said, "is salad all right for you? I didn't even think to ask what dryads find appropriate." Juniper grinned. "That is so thoughtful. I'm fine with salad, Sally, but thanks for asking. Dryads will eat just about any nutrients we can absorb." Leave it to my mum to ask. I'd never even considered whether dryads ate. I should have been more sensitive, I guess. Sometimes folks at camp asked if I avoided eating seafood because I was the son of Poseidon and could talk to fish or whatever. I always answered that no, I ate fish. Have you ever talked to one? They don't have a lot to say. Mostly it boils down to, are you food? Am I food? Eating them is the only way to answer the question. Obviously, I don't consume the smart pieces like octopuses, dolphins, sharks and manta rays. Dude, if you ever need an animal to help you with your physics homework, manta rays are geniuses. Grover and Juniper set the table. Usually that was my job, but it was fun watching them being domestic together. Can nature spirits be called domestic? Whatever, they were cute, nudging each other and giggling and making moony eyes. Annabeth got the casserole out of the oven as she chatted with Paul about her latest architecture assignment. Paul seemed to find her schoolwork fascinating, though he didn't know much about design. My mum just hummed to herself and smiled, happy to be surrounded by positive energy. Once at the dinner table, we dug in. Grover, Annabeth and I recounted the adventures of the week, trying to focus on the stuff that was funny in retrospect, not the stuff that almost got us killed. Sometimes it was hard to separate the two, but my mum was in tears laughing when I recounted my wild ride through the lingerie department with Hakuba, a detail I had previously omitted. I should have had you pick up some things for me, she said. Don't make it weirder, I grumbled. And this recommendation letter, Paul said. Did it really just say Hecate recommends you for things? Well, yeah. So we don't get to help you write your own letter this time, my mum said. That's a shame. I shuddered. I did not want team writing my recommendation letters to become a tradition. Does well with animals, Grover volunteered. Is widely travelled, Annabeth added. Wears a bra on his ankle, Juniper offered, and then frowned. Sorry, I have trouble with humid jokes. Was that too much? Everybody laughed. Even I smiled. Okay, I said. We can add those to my third letter, if I ever get it. Oh, you will, Annabeth said. We'll be here to help you, Grover promised, even if it means that you two have to leave for California afterward. Hey now, said Juniper, squeezing Grover's wrist. I told you, don't worry about that, because no matter where you go, your roots are where you're planted. And this, right here, she gestured around the table. These are Percy's and Annabeth's roots. That stopped us. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from a juniper bush. Of course, Grover said, and my girlfriend's roots are literally right here. He nudged the juniper clipping she had brought. We all laughed, but Juniper was right. Looking around the table, I knew I was where I belonged. And even if we moved across the country, Annabeth and I would always have a home here. We wouldn't be leaving anything behind. We'd just be spreading out our branches. Well, I said, in that case, what's for dessert? How about this? Annabeth kissed me, which was better than any dessert, and a whole lot better than candy corn.